o'clock on the dot, and we are going to get started. First of all, let me say thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate your attendance, and I apologize if there was any confusion to anyone regarding our start time at 12:30. So we are going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to start with our first participant, Joe Roberts. Joe is better known as the Skid Row CEO. He's the winner of the Ontario Premier's Award, the Courage to Come Back Award, has received an honorary doctorate from Laurentian University, and was recently awarded the Meritorious Service Medal from the Governor General of Canada. Joe's life wasn't, however, always this good. In fact, 25 years ago, he pushed a shopping cart in Vancouver's downtown east side as a homeless drug addict. Joe maximized his second chance in life to create extraordinary business success, but he didn't stop there. Joe and his wife Marie started the Push for Change, a 17-month, 9,000-kilometer walk across Canada to raise awareness and funds for youth homelessness. Joe's story is one of perseverance, determination, and the resiliency of the human spirit. He's a living testament to the idea that anything is possible. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Skid Row CEO, Joe Roberts.
Thanks, Kim. It's really great to be here. I'm going to share my screen and just walk you through some ideas. So my job today is to share a story of hope, inspiration, and not just how to survive difficult times, but how do we transcend, how do we transform, and how do we flourish? So the last 18 months, fear, uncertainty, doubt, worried about our loved ones, financial insecurity, going to bed with worry and anxiety, only to wake up in the morning with problems that don't have solutions. As we continue to march forward, feeling overwhelmed, burdened, and stressed, we're not always making the right choices and the right responses to that adversity, challenge, and change. Now, for most of you listening to that sounds like a description of the pandemic. And yet, in every sense of the word, that was the experience I had 30 years ago as a homeless person living in Vancouver's downtown east side. In 1989, this was a picture of me. I was one of those people you see in the inner city pushing a shopping cart. And the good news is that there is a way to transform, and there is a way to leverage adversity, challenge, and change and actually benefit from it, and not just survive it, but flourish and transform. And so that's really what I want to share with you today. In the 1980s, I was one of those people who struggled with mental health and despair and hopelessness. And every single morning I woke up not knowing when this nightmare was going to end. And so when the pandemic hit, I found myself in real familiar emotional territory. It's like I've been in this hole before, but fortunately for me, I had a set of tools and I dusted off that toolbox and I got busy. Now, like many stories, my story didn't start in the inner city pushing a shopping cart, addicted to drugs with chronic homelessness and mental health problems. My story started with a lot more optimism, way back in the early 1970s. In fact, this was a picture of me and Mrs. Morrison's class in grade 2 in Midland, Ontario. I grew up in this little town north of Toronto. And, my childhood was idyllic. It was like the Leave It to Beaver show. It was awesome. I loved school, but you know what I loved more was home. Waiting for me at home every day was this extraordinary family. Now, we didn't have a lot of money, but what we lacked in financial wealth, we made up in family wealth. I had this mom who was a stay-at-home mom. I had an older brother, younger sister, a little dog named Angus, and my dad was this larger-than-life guy. He used to say things like, "I love you, you can do and be anything." My father was that kind of man, that kind of leader, that kind of community volunteer that spoke to our possibility as children. He said, "Son, you can do and be anything." In my father's shadow, I felt safe and protected, and I felt my potential and possibility. Unfortunately, 1975, life lifed us. And we got dealt a blow, uninvited adversity, and literally overnight, we lost our father. And so I lost my dad, my mom, she lost the love of her life, and our family, we lost our financial insecurity. And literally overnight, we found ourselves lower middle class, plunged into way below the poverty line with fears and anxiety around how are we going to pay this mortgage and these bills. And I remember the first time that feeling of anxiousness, right? My mom did the best she could, and one of her solutions was to remarry quickly. Unfortunately, the man who came into our family next wasn't anything like my dad. He was a violent, abusive alcoholic. And so I went from this father who said things like, I love you, you can do and be anything, to a man who would say things like, you're dumb and you'll never amount to anything. And I was 8 years old and I really didn't know how to process that properly. I didn't have the skills and tools to make new meaning out of the tough stuff in life. At the age of 9, desperately trying to fit in, I experimented with drugs for the first time. And I remember the feeling of being under the influence. And I went home, and for the first time in my life, the chaos, the fear, the uncertainty, it somehow was numbed, and I felt safe under the protection of substance. And so that was a place that I ran to for the next 15 years of my life. The only problem was what small benefit it provided in the beginning would eventually be my undoing. By the time I was 15, I was angry and I was getting in trouble at school. I got in trouble with at home. I got kicked out of the house, and then I dropped out of school. By the time I was 17, I went to jail for the first time. I was this really angry young man with a chip on my shoulder. And the only positive thing that I had going in my life is I had this relationship that I had started in grade 10. I was with this real sweet girl who just believed in me. And you know, despite all my outward obnoxious behavior and my loudness and my thrashing at the world, she saw something beautiful in me. But that relationship, like everything else in my life, eventually came to a screeching halt as my behavior was just very unbecoming. And so we ended up parting and going different ways. Feeling that sense of abandonment and loss and hopelessness, I decided I was going to change the venue. And I jumped on a bus and I headed west for fame and fortune. And 3.5 days later, I landed in Vancouver. And over the next several years, my life completely unraveled. At its worst, I was sleeping under a viaduct, pushing a shopping cart around the inner city. I struggled with mental health. I struggled with suicide ideation. My life was really hopeless. You know, so many people over the last 20 years, and I've spoken to over a couple million people, have asked me that question: what does it feel like to be homeless? Well, you've been through a pandemic. The emotional range is the same. That disconnection from family, that isolation, that question of when is this going to end? You know, and in the midst of that, I did not make the right choices. The day finally came where my life sort of spiraled down and I hit bottom. And I had a day that was worse than others. And I remember I woke up, I was sitting on a park bench and I was going through withdrawal. And the only way that I can describe opiate withdrawal to you is like the worst flu you've ever had. Imagine COVID and knowing that $10 makes it go away. And you begin to understand that vicious cycle, right? To get rid of those symptoms. And I did something desperate. And I sold the only item I had left in the world that was worth anything, and that was the boots off my feet. Now I live in the Pacific Northwest, and it was wintertime. And I remember when my foot hit that cold concrete sidewalk, I felt hopeless, filled with pain and desperation. And it was that moment where I just didn't want to be on this earth anymore. And instead of acting on that idea of self-harm, I did something different. I turned and I made a proclamation and a promise. And I said on that street corner, if I get a second chance, I promise I will make the most of this opportunity and I'll do something to pay it forward. And that was a promise I made, you know, in 1989. You know, with the help of my mom and a frontline service provider, I got flown back to Ontario and entered into a drug treatment program. And over the next several weeks, I began to piece back my world and my life. You know, before I left the downtown east side of Vancouver, I met a man who would actually color my entire future and give me my life's mantra. His name was Gus, and I met him just happenstance, sitting on a park bench. You know, never underestimate the power of those 5 to 7 minute interactions. You know, Gus looked at me, and on the day he met me, I was dirty and disheveled, matted hair, scruffy beard, yellow teeth, black fingernails, and clothes I've been wearing for weeks, and a stink that comes from bad personal hygiene of sleeping outside. But Gus saw past all of that. And I remember he looked at me and he said, Joe, there's more to you than you can see. There's more to you than you can see. You see, what Gus spoke to is my possibility. I think the greatest thing that we can do as leaders is invest in possibility. This is what great parents do. This is what great coaches do. You think about your life and who you are today. You are the sum of 5 people who spoke a possibility into your life. Possibility is the heart of all innovation and design and technology. It's behind every disruptive technology in the last 10 years. Right? Possibility is mindset is what put Richard Branson into orbit on Saturday morning. Possibility mindset is what Einstein pointed to when he talked about imagination. And possibility mindset is that feeling you have when you hold that newborn baby and think, who's this little girl going to be? In front of them is nothing but a blank slate. Well, that never goes away for any of us. And possibility mindset is looking out in the world, not seeing as it is, but how it could be. Unfortunately, during a pandemic or in crisis and change and challenge, we revert, we go into that fetal position. And the way our minds work is we have that negative bias, always looking for the next ball to drop or that next negative thing to happen. And we are blinded by the possibility of what could be instead of what might be, right? Gus was right. I went back to school and I put my head down, and I remember that feeling of not belonging, and that I was scared when I went to Loyalist College. After treatment, I enrolled in a community college, and you know, this was way out of my comfort zone, and I was the kid who thought he was dumb, but I took action in the face of negative emotion, and something beautiful happened. You know, after 4 years, I walked across that stage at Loyalist. They called out my name. They said, Joe Roberts, Dean's List. I graduated with a 3.94 GPA. I still didn't get a haircut though. I went down to where my mom was sitting. She gave me a kiss on the cheek. She said, I love you, son. I'm proud of you. Now, I don't know where I'd be without mom, but something hit me that day is how many people in this, you know, in this world don't have my mom. They don't have Gus. Right? I went out into the world and I got my first job at Minolta selling copiers, and things were great. It turns out I had a whole bunch of transferable skills. You know, I knew how to work hard. I knew how to solve problems. And I, you know, I had this knack for communication because of my time of homelessness. I was successful, not in spite of homelessness, but because of it. And this is the positive thing that I look at. You know, the pandemic and the challenges that we face in the last 18 months have built tools, have given us skills, may possibly be the skills and tools that we need as a species to solve some of the bigger problems. Adversity introduces us to ourselves, and it always says the same thing. There's more to you than you can see. After Minolta, I got an opportunity in a tech startup, and me and my business partner, we put our heads down and we worked really hard for four and a half years. And I remember I came into the office one day and there's a whole pile of people working really hard. We had built one of the most successful companies in Western Canada. It's a communications company. And I remember sitting down at my desk that day, and sitting on my desk was a copy of Canadian Business. And I was on the cover of it. In less than 12 years, I went from a kid pushing a shopping cart, addicted to heroin, living under a bridge, to being more successful than I could have ever imagined in my life. I was the Canadian version of the American dream. In 2003, I decided to leave the business world to pursue a passion, to do this work, to help people realize their possibility and potential, to teach and provide ideas and thought leadership to help companies, organizations, associations, and people find their bigger sense of self. And it was around this time when I left that I was working with a guy named Dr. Sean Richardson. And we were on an airplane ride one day, and I said, Sean, I'm really passionate about supporting young people, people who come from impossible environments, but they have potential and they have possibility, just like Gus taught me. I said, I want to do something to pay it forward. And I confided in Sean about that promise and that pact I made on that street corner over 20 years earlier. And Sean said, well, when Canadians want to raise money for things, they run across the country. Why don't you run across the country, Joe? And I remember laughing at him because at the time I was 100 pounds heavier than I am today. And I'm a self-described non-athlete. I'm the guy who failed gym in grade 10, got picked last for the team. He said, well, maybe you don't run, you walk. And I said, well, how would it be different? He says, what if you pushed a shopping cart across Canada? It's a symbol of chronic homelessness, the thing that you're trying to avoid for every kid. There was something about that. The hair on my neck went up. And so over the next 3 years, we first built a shopping cart, and then we did all the other tasks necessary to prepare to walk and engage the country in a conversation. Finally, on May 1st, I stood in St. John's, Newfoundland, in front of a task that seemed only a few years earlier absolutely impossible. And I took those first few steps. And the greatest fear I had is that nobody would care. This short video captures just how well we engaged. I hope you like it. It's pretty inspiring.
Coming over the bridge, here we are, and there's Joe. Push for change.
Have courage to fight the people around you care. There's no wrong or right, just a love that we can share. Ain't no pain, how we've suffered along the way. Underneath our clothes, our souls remain unchanged. They're awesome. Take off your mask of fear and push for change. Throw off your coat of doubt and embrace the rain. Everyone is unique, yet we're a part of the human race.
When the campaign was finished, I'd walked over 11 million steps, 9,064 kilometers. And for our American friends, that's the distance from New York City to the Santa Monica Pier and back to New York with one Canadian winner. We raised $1.6 million. We got an opportunity to connect with the federal government. Probably the most important piece was we got to connect with over 100,000 young people. My favorite day by far was the day I came into Ontario. We were met by over 1,000 people, including the commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, students, and the mayor. But the best part of that day was walking down that bridge deck and meeting the greatest hockey dad in the world, Walter Gretzky. And I remember Walter walking with me, and I said, Walter, what one piece of advice would you give me on resilience? And Walter looked at me and he said, don't quit. And I remember at the time thinking that's rather simplistic, but when I got into Northern Ontario, those words became really important. And when I think about it, you know, if everybody who had a challenge needed support, needed that boost, needed just to have that one person in their corner like Walter saying, don't quit, to keep our feet moving despite that negative emotion. See, I believe that the greatest tragedy of life is not that it ends too soon, it's that we wait too long to begin it. Every one of us wants to create change in our families, in our organizations, with our work, in our community. And I believe that as an optimist, that we live at a watershed moment in human history, where in the not too distant future, we're going to look at this time and call it before, as each one of us wakes up to our possibility, our potential. And then with courageous and brave action, we pick up the mantle that is our opus, our push for change, and march forward with courageous action. We can and we will change the world. Not one moment before we change ourselves. And the reason I believe that is the first time I had that idea, I was sitting on a park bench and, I was sitting on a piece of cardboard in Vancouver asking the community for a little change. Now, before I leave, I want to honor somebody who worked probably harder than I did on this campaign, and that's Marie. Marie was truly the heart behind the cart. She put in more time and more effort to support this campaign, and I think it's really important in these challenging times to support and call out those people who work really hard to make things happen. She really, her stalwart work ethic was what really kept the wheels moving, and I'm indebted to her for her commitment and her hard work. And as you can tell, I'm a little enamored with Marie, and that's one of the reasons is that we share our life together as husband and wife. And so it is today our collective vision and our values and our connected to passion and purpose that really shines the light and vision forward. But Marie and I are also connected by something else. We're connected by a history and a past. And that's because Marie is the same girl from grade 10. And after 28 years, we reconnected and found each other and made it official and became husband and wife. Today, I live a life that I could only have once imagined in my mind. I believe in possibility, and there's two things I love more than anything: my family and the work that I do. I want to help people with the time I have left understand what their possibility is, to inspire their action, and to give them tools to not just overcome adversity, challenge, and change, but to transform and to flourish. So I'd love the opportunity to work with you. And I want to thank Kim and everyone at Infinite Speakers and the extraordinary lineup of other thought leaders that will follow for their time and their commitment today, and mostly for you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. Thanks.
Well, how awesome was that? I completely wasn't expecting that twist in the story. Was anybody else? Our next speaker coming up is David Moore. David is a Navy officer and Air Force decorated aviator. He survived 3 plane crashes, flew through 3 hurricanes while performing search and rescue with the Coast Guard, and has logged 39 combat missions in the Middle East in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to David Moore.
3 things I want to share with you with Wake Up and Win. When it comes to the wake up part, somebody that's been through 3 plane crashes can obviously tell you something about life and death. And the first thing I want to share with you is urgency. You have to have urgency in life. Now, in my first plane crash, it was nothing about the plane crash. December 17th, 1997 was about life. It was about learning about life. It was about getting the opportunity at 23 years old to go through a midlife crisis and actually reevaluating even being on this earth. And you're going to say, Dave, well, you know what? I'm not going to be in 3 plane crashes. That's ridiculous. Who is through that? So yesterday I flew in from Boston. I flew into Pittsburgh, and my wife and I drove up to Wisconsin because we haven't been able to make a road trip like that in a while. As we're driving past Chicago, my wife looks at me and says, that's where Uncle Jay used to live. And he moved not too long ago from Chicago. And I said, his wife died, didn't she? And I never heard the real story, but she was 50 years old, and she woke up a morning where she had, she just had a regular day. They had plans. They were going to go to work, and she was making breakfast. And all of a sudden she put her head in the freezer and said, this is it, I'm done. And just passed out on the floor. So it's not about not passed out. She died right there on the floor. And I don't share this as a being morbid. I share it as you have to embrace that excitement of life, because if you don't, you never know when that last moment's going to come. And that's what I learned on December 17th, 1997, is I was just an invincible 23-year-old. I think we're finally up there. I was an invincible 23-year-old. And what I learned is, boy, life is short. And it comes, you have plans, you have things going on. So you know what? That's what brings me to my next point. You have to be authentic. You have to be you. If you're not being the best version of you in life, then you're going through this life and you're making compromises. And that's what December 17th, 1997 taught me, was that I can't afford, because up to that point in my life, I was average, I was common, I was normal. And that's not because of who I was, it's because I never found the best in me. And I never had that wake up call that said, man, there's way more to life than just going through the motions of life. There's way more to life than just kicking that can down the road, being average, being mediocre, because sometimes even being average, being mediocre will take you far enough. If you have enough charisma, you have enough character, you get your job, you get settled in. And it's like, well, hey, I'm not doing too bad, but you really need to go out there. And I want you to have that sense of urgency and be the absolute best version of you that you can be. So you need to dedicate. Nobody wants to dedicate anymore. We go around and we don't dedicate to a company. We don't dedicate to ourselves. We don't dedicate becoming the best version of us. And we're in one of the worst periods of our lives right now, where there's actually so much opportunity out there. I see these people, they're just, well, I don't like it over here because, this person upset me at work, or this upset me, or this. And that's not what it's about. It's about, I'm challenging you to go out there and give 110%, because that's how I was able to come from here and just go to supersize and get everything I wanted to get in life and be successful in multiple industries across the board and become the best at what I do, is because I was willing to dedicate. When you're somewhere, you need to be there. You need to be present, because anybody that's touched death, came to death, was dead, who knows what happened that night. Anybody that's been there will tell you there's three things you can do. You can dwell in the past, because figuring out the how can be really, really, really hard sometimes. So you can dwell in that past, or you can live in the present and work towards the future. And if you don't live in the present, sometimes we get in that cycle where we're always looking to what's next, and we're not being present in what we're doing. And what I found is some places I was at, and if you look, you always think the grass is greener on the other side. So we hop, or we jump, or we go over here, where if you just dedicate yourself to your company, to your team, to who you are, and you dedicate being the best version of you, success will ensue. And you will get everything that you want. And I don't care what industry you go down, what profession you go in, you will be the top salesman, the top executive, or if you're in an entry-level position, you will rise through the ranks, because people will recognize that. And it's not always fair, and we all know that. And then authenticity. Everybody wants somebody that's authentic. I'm Dave Moore. I never wanted to be an inspirational speaker. This wasn't my goal in life. It wasn't my plan in life, but it was obviously what I was supposed to be doing. So I'm going to give you me, because this is who I am. This is what's worked for me. I've been able to overcome obstacles that most people go through therapy and doctors, and they're never able to get past it. And they're just never able to move on. And what I want to do is I want to take that 20 years that it took me to come out of that stalled out, that the point where I couldn't understand it all. And I want to be able to help propel you to that point. I had an excellent, and this made me feel really good about who I am and what I'm putting out there. An ex-colleague of mine, she looked me up on Facebook, and I get this message that says, "Hey, I was in a plane crash, Dave. I really need to talk to you." And the first person she wanted to come to and talk to was me, and I loved it. And we went down, we sat down for an hour and a half, and I could see it, she's bleeding in her brain, her eyes, she's still in shock, and I know everything she's going through. And I hope, because we left the how and we left that behind, and we went to the why. And that's what I'm trying to put out there. I want to take the how and get to the why we're here, and then move forward and go on from there. So what about get your life off autopilot? This is where we all suffer. We get in that spot. I've been there. I've gotten the title. I had the money. My bills are paid. I'm successful at my job. And we just sit there. We don't challenge ourselves. We don't push ourselves. And when you get to the top, you're the top salesman. It's hard to keep reaching and keep setting your own goals. And the only way that you're going to get your life off autopilot is become accountable to yourself. Otherwise, you're going to sit, and you're just going to become stagnant where you're at. And that's what I want to get away from. I want to get everybody away from just getting stagnant and saying, look, you can reach further, you can reach higher, and you can be better at who you are and what you do. So the thing about compromising is, once you make a compromise, once you say, hey, I'm afraid to swim, I'm afraid of the water, or once you say, I'm afraid of this, you're going to become afraid of everything in life. And then as you compromise, every compromise you make, it's going to decrease you and bring you down, where you're pretty soon you're going to be afraid of everything. And my goal is to say, look what I've done, look where I pulled myself out of, and I was able to do this because I was willing to fight through it, because I wanted it. So defining success, we're not gonna hop up or stay on this too long. I'm keeping track of my time. I'm already halfway through, and I'm not even near where I want to be. This is one of my downfalls. So I know my shortcomings. So I made my 9 points that I want to make. 6 of them are authentic, and 3 of them repeat themselves. So I hope that I make sure that I get them. So keeping on track, defining success. If you're actually targeting, if you're looking and saying, hey, and I hope maybe if you're in sales, money should be your target, should be one of your targets. But if you're just looking at money, when you're defining the success of your life, you have to look at really what the big picture is that you want, and then the success will ensue. When you put your heart and your passion into it, that's what's going to drive you forward, and not allowing it to take the easy way out. So my objectives: urgency. I already talked about that. Being authentic. Nobody is authentic out there anymore. Seemingly, there's a lot of people that want to be, and there's a lot of people that just kind of settle in. But being authentic is what's going to separate you, and what's going to make people surround around you. When I was in the military, the XO looked at me one time and he said, Dave, he said, how do you get these guys to follow you? How do you get these guys to surround you? And I wasn't really the model military officer. I was just Dave. I was kind of outside the box a little bit and just who I am. And I looked at him and I said, I treat him like people. I'm just myself, and I'm dedicated. I'm dedicated to the team, and I treat them well. And in return, they always treated me very well, and I always had a great deal of success. And again, commitment, being able to commit to something. So overcoming. What I want to leave you with. What I want to leave you with. I'm sorry, I get very excited because I have a lot to convey. Is overcoming. So put a disorder on every single thing you do. Say, yeah, Dave, you had post-traumatic stress disorder. That should have been the end of you after that first plane crash. You have an eating disorder. You have this disorder. You have that disorder. Whatever it is, everybody's trying to tell you have a disorder. But I found myself with post-traumatic stress after a plane crash, and we'll get there, but I took the disorder off of it, and I was able to overcome myself. And it was such a huge obstacle. Again, the lesson's nothing to do with aviation. It's about what you can conquer when you actually want to do it. A leader worth following. Being a leader worth following. I'll just tell you where I came up with the term a leader worth following. I was out in California and I was doing an event. It was right before the Clinton Trump election. And I was brought out. It was all the Democrats and Republicans. So you can imagine it was the Silicon Valley, and it was the California politicians. And it was very like this. It was very head to head. Went in there, trying to bring some synergy. That's good for everybody, trying to get everybody to work together. I mean, this is good for our country, good for us. It's good for Dave, so just trying to make these people just kind of break the ice. I was the opening speaker and I left there. It was a really great event. I was really pumped up, and I went out and I got on I was in San Jose and I was getting on an airplane, and this was after 9/11, obviously. And as I was getting on the airplane, I see this guy up there, and he's a young guy, maybe early 20s, big head of hair. He's just being him, and you could tell that. And all these suits are just surrounded around him. And this is when it's real hard to get back to the terminal if you're not a ticketed passenger. Well, after we get on the airplane, and sure enough, he gets on the airplane, everybody else just leaves. And so I was like, wow, just as fate would have it, I'm sitting right next to him. So I started speaking with him and I said, what do you do? And he's like, well, I'm fun unemployed. I'm like, that's great. So fun unemployed, where are you fun unemployed from? He said, NASA. I was like, wow. So this guy's, obviously he's a master of who he is. He's the best at what he does. And he does alternative fuels. So getting back, those people were from a major defense contractor. He was going to meet with Virgin Atlantic. He was going to see all the major people in the space industry. And I said, look, obviously money is not going to be a deciding factor. Everybody wants you. What is going to make you choose them? What is going to make you bring what you have to their company? And he looked at me and he just said, somebody who's worthwhile following. That's what people want. We have management skills and we have our skills, our personal skills that we can develop. And we develop those when we're being the best us. And when we do that, everybody's going to follow us. And the last thing is a positive mental attitude. I don't mean like rah, because the hoorah, the cheerleading is about an inch thick and an inch deep. And when things get tough, if you're just out there as a cheerleader, nobody's really going to buy into that because they're going to see right through of it. So the very best example I can think of, because we always think, oh man, there's an unfair situation or something like that, is Admiral Nimitz. After Pearl Harbor, the Japanese attack us. We have no idea. And he's sent out there to go ahead and clean or to fix this mess, to try to get our military back operational, get our country back, stood back up and back on its feet after this horrific attack. And he went out there, and after the bosun mate took him around and showed him all the destruction, he said, wow, what do you think? Everybody's just defeated. Everybody's just beat down. There's no more. Everybody just felt that, hey man, this is it. They really took us down. And he looked and he said, you know what? Either the attack force was really disorganized, or we have somebody looking out for us, because there's three huge mistakes that they made. Number one, they attacked on a Sunday. So only 10% of the sailors were actually on the ships, because that's what war is. It's killing people. It's terrible. So we lost 3,000, but on Monday we'd have lost 30,000. They didn't take out the fuel right over top of that hill right there. If they took out our fuel supply, we would just be dead in the water. We wouldn't even be able to move any of our ships. And third, they didn't take out our dry docks. And since they didn't take out our dry docks, the time that it would have taken us to tow the boats from Hawaii back to the States to be fixed, they already had them up and repaired, and we were back in the war. That's the kind of positive mental attitude that I approach life with. Like, look, I mean, who's been through 3 plane crashes and even think that that's fair? Who's been through, I mean, I've lost a child, I've lost a parent, I've had friends commit suicide, and that was just over the COVID. So it doesn't stop coming. It just keeps coming on and on and on, but it's taking that and finding that silver lining. And that's what's going to make the difference. And that's what people love to get around. Right? I mean, come on. So that's December 17th, 1997. I mean, it was 94 years later from the first flight ever in Kitty Hawk. And I can't go into this at all, actually. But so anyways, the positive mental attitude and what I take from this is where I want to get to the aftermath. It's a fun story. And all you need to know is I touched death that night, and the US government said there's no reason that I should be alive. And they gave me 3 reasons. So imagine digesting that at 23. I crashed with another person with me, a doctor, and we come to the aftermath. So what do you think the aftermath that I had to go through with just this? I'm a young guy. I'm 23 years old. I'm trying to figure life out. And what happened was, this is actually the start of who I am today. It took a while to get here, but this is the start, because up to that point, I was just kind of living in my comfort zone. I was doing okay. I was struggling through college. You have to understand. I mean, I'm pumping plasma. I'm just getting through college, no matter, because I didn't have the money. Came very blue collar, but I'm fighting, and I was doing well, and I was getting to where I need to be. But this is when I said, wow, I don't want to just be average, because it's like this. I don't want to be average in life. I want to go out and I want to be the very best version of who Dave Moore is. I want to reach so far that I become the person that I want to be. And that's a good place to be. So what came with this? 2 years after that, for the following 2 years, I didn't even want to be alive at some points. I had my at-rest heart rate was about 140 beats per minute. That's at rest. I couldn't even do anything. I was just like this. I'm sitting in a psychologist's office, and they have these light boards that are going like this. They're trying to get me to damper down, to calm down. And I couldn't calm down. I couldn't even talk about the plane crash. I would start shaking and just everything that came with it. And I couldn't even get on the back of a commercial airline. I couldn't even fly out to my cousin's wedding in California. So what I had to do was either compromise and quit, or I had to find it within me to go ahead and stand back up on my feet. And when Dave Moore says I'm going to stand back up on my feet, I have to go for the absolute highest level that I can go. So I spent 2 years as a box salesman, and I did my very best at selling those boxes. And I became very successful in the company. They left the door open for me to come back when I left. I mean, I did very, very, very well at it. But I was driving down the road, and I look up in the sky, and I just closed this big account. I said, Dave, you're a pilot. You need to get back on that horse. You need to get back in that fight. And I went back out to the airport, and my legs were just straight out like this. I had so much anxiety. I had panic attacks going through me, and I was able to overcome that. I was able to push through that. And 1 led to 2, 2 led to 4, 4 led to 8, 8 led to 16. Because when I started out, I wanted to go and fly for the airlines. That was the life I wanted to have. But then I ended up on this awesome journey, and it's in my book. I have to skip over a lot because I can't pay attention to the details right now. And I end up in the Coast Guard, which I never thought I would have been. And everybody told me I was stupid. Everybody told me I was crazy. Everybody told me I gave up so much. And I'm down there at Navy Flight School trying to compete with everybody. And I've got my legs straight out, and I'm trying to overcome my mind, and they're trying to get through flight school. And I did it. And not only did I overcome, I excelled at it, and I graduated at the top of my class. So what I'm saying is, you have to take the disorder out. And that's what I can show you how to do, is take the disorder out, and you can beat anything. Took me 2 years to get past this plane crash. Fast forwarding, we have to go across a lot, but fast forwarding, I'm in a little fender bender in the air. I have a little mid-air collision with an Air Force airplane, and it settled in. It freaked me out the way it came. They hit the tail. We could have spiraled in the ground. And instead of what-ifing it for 2 years and putting myself all the way back through that, I was able to recover in 2 weeks. And then I went through a third plane crash not too long ago, about a year and a half ago. I was run off the runway to a mechanical failure. All these amazing things happened. And I was able to fly that airplane out in 2 days. So when you're able to stop compromising and you're able to go ahead and start focusing on your goals and achieving what you need to achieve and the success that you're looking for, the sky's the limit. And I can't put that into context enough. So overcoming a disorder is all about, you have to be able to, whatever's holding you back, this is what I've learned. You have to be able to release control of the situation from your mind, because we really don't control as much as we think we control. And you have to release the control of it, and you have to step back, and you have to be able to come with a fresh new perspective and say, and this is how you're going to be level-headed, and this is how you're going to approach the situation, and this is how you're going to be able to overcome whatever you need to do. And it works, people. I'm not telling you I was afraid to swim. That's why I brought that up. And I was able to get through Navy water survival because I was determined, because I'd already learned how to overcome myself. And it was all in here mentally. And I knew that your mind will hold you back. So take the overcoming and apply that to anything in your life. And you can just walk over top of that mountain. When I went to SEER school in the Air Force, I was amazed, because they pushed us and we're out there and we're training in the Cascade Mountains. And we walk up to a mountain and we would walk straight over top of it. You would never, ever in a million years walk up to a mountain like that, think you could do something like that with snowshoes on. And that's what I liked about the military, is they taught me who I was and what we could do. So we would walk straight over that mountain. And that's what you have to do in life. You have to drop that disorder off, and you have to drop whatever's holding you back, or whoever's telling you something. They're telling me about my time here. And you have to be able to let that go. And when you do that, when you release the control of it, we are our own biggest obstacle. We hold ourselves back. We limit ourselves to what we can do. And it applies in our personal lives. And our personal lives can't be separated from our professional lives, because one equals the other. If you're not happy with who you are, you're not going to go in and give 110% and be able to give the team, because that's really what it's about, is being a part of a group, being a part of a team, somebody bigger. And you're not going to be able to go in and give them what they need. Yeah, sure, we have our shortcomings, and that's why we have a team, is they're stronger over here, but you have to be the best that you can be. And that's when you're giving 110% in life. So you talk about self-doubt. After that first plane crash, it was so bad. And I hope to be able to share the story with it, or you can read it in my book. I was hurt so bad that I wasn't sure that there wasn't mentally something wrong with me. And I suffered through that for 2 years. So when I was graduating Navy flight school, everybody else is up there with their wings on their chest, whatever side it was on, I don't know. And I'm up there thinking, hey, I do have the mental capacity, because I have this giant canoe down here, and I wasn't sure, because that's probably not normal. So there was a lot that I had to overcome just up in my mind. But when you beat that, there is nothing in this world that can hold you back. And I've been able to be successful in every single industry down the line and become somebody who others have wanted to gather around and rally around. And that's when you make good deals, because a great deal is when it's good for Dave, but a great deal is when it's good for everyone. And you start making it in an environment where everybody's included, everybody wants to rally around you, and they see your integrity, they see your character, they see your authenticity, and the sky's the limit. When you start getting that kind of personal leadership development or skills of yourself, the world is, there are no limits on your life. There are no limits on what you want to do. The world is your oyster, so just choose wisely, and you'll be able to be successful in whatever you want to do. That's the easier to navigate. So if I can leave you with one thing, you have to find the champion in you. There's going to be so many. That's the Honda jet I ran off the runway down at BNA. And it was so funny. The press said that I landed on it. I mean, it was just, they just blew it out. They just missed it completely. So what I took from that is when I ran off the runway, we cleared all the lights. I was able to regain control of the airplane. It was nothing I did. It was just kind of a big gray area. But what I took from that is I was able to fly that airplane out 2 days later. And if you don't think that I was shooken up after that, trying to digest, because I'm like, how does this happen to me? A third accident? Are you kidding me? I've come so far in life, but I was able to overcome it. So find the champion in you. Thank you so much for having me, Kim, and Infinite Speakers. And I hope to see you at your next event.
All right, let's give a round of applause, reactions, and everything for Dave Moore. Thank you so much for bringing the energy today. We appreciate you. And you guys, Dave's going to give you 110% if you book him for your next event. That's guaranteed. I'm pretty sure you guys all saw that, right? All right. Next up, he has generously offered his book. Can you guys see this in my camera? His book, Wake Up and Win. So if you guys would like a copy of Wake Up and Win, I need you to please message me in the chat, message me or send me an email at kim@infinitespeakers.com, okay? So make sure you get that message to me so that we can get a copy of Dave's book, Wake Up and Win, out to you guys today, all right? Next up, we've got Kathy Perry. Kathy is not only a close friend, but awesome speaker, and she is a corporate energy expert. So with Kathy's introduction, I'd like to say, do you wish you knew how to snap back after a disruptive event, including the big one? And I think we all know what we're talking about. Could you use great ideas to encourage a positive mindset during transitions? Are you ready for the tips to help you and your team stay energized? If you answered yes to any of these questions, Kathy Perry is ready to help you stretch. Get ready for a lively look at how resilient behaviors can be learned even before the disruption happens or applied after the crisis. Kathy holds degrees in business and food management from Miami University. Yes, we're in Ohio, that one in Ohio, and a certification in plant-based nutrition, as well as coaching certification. She's the creator of Power Up and Perform and holds the designation of professional speaker from the National Speakers Association. Ms. Perry has authored 4 books and lives and travels from Pittsburgh, PA, where she enjoys a mild dark chocolate addiction and cooking for her hungry friends, including me. Please give an energetic welcome to speaker, trainer, and author, Kathy Perry.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim. And thank you, Infinite Speakers. I am thrilled to be here with you after coming home on a red eye last night, but I'm ready to go because the energy at this event has been amazing. And so I really hope that all of you who are here are feeling that energy. And we're going to talk just a little bit more about resilience. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. First thing I want to start off with, though, as I'm getting my slides teed up, is where are you from? I'd love to hear. Go ahead and put it in the chat. What is your hometown? I would like to start off talking a little bit about hometowns. So go ahead, throw it in the chat. Is your hometown a big city? Maybe it's kind of one of those smaller towns where people, kind of know each other, or possibly it's a really small town where you had that friendly feeling. Well, let me see what y'all put in the chat about your hometowns. Well, I grew up, my chat's not pulling up just yet, but I'm sure there's a variety of them because we're from all over. Well, the thing about hometowns is they're this place that you kind of feel comfortable, right? We have these warm feelings about our hometowns for the most part because some memories from our early childhood, early days started there, or when we go back, there's relatives or people that we want to see. And it's kind of this nice, stable place in our souls, right? Well, a little bit about my hometown. I grew up in Akron, Ohio. Anybody here know what Akron, Ohio is famous for? You can throw that in the chat if you want. But if you guessed rubber capital of the world and not LeBron James, then points to you. Because before LeBron James, the famous basketball player, was known for being from Akron, Akron was the rubber capital of the world because Goodyear, Goodrich, and Firestone were all founded in Akron, Ohio. Well, I grew up in the 70s and not in the city, kind of outside. I was kind of one of those small town girls living on the skirts of a city. And there I am with one of my many barn cats. But my dad worked in town. And what I loved about going downtown was I got to see my dad and sights that I didn't get to see every day. It was a fun experience. Well, my dad didn't work in the rubber industry. He worked for the company that his grandfather had started, a welding shop. Well, it kind of grew a little bit under his father. And when I would go in, first I'd run into my dad's office and I'd give him a big hug, right? But that was not the good stuff. No, the good stuff was with Grandpa, because Grandpa sat behind this big looming desk. And out of 19 grandchildren, I ended up with the desk. Just my parents were getting rid of it. They said, anyone need this big old giant desk? And I had an empty den. So I'm like, I'll take that desk. And I wanted it because it was just filled with memories and good stuff. So my grandfather would sit behind that desk and we'd run in and we'd go behind him and we'd get the grandpa hug. Do you know this hug? Or maybe there's a grandpa or grandparent on this, right? You hug those grandkids with a little extra, right? Because it just feels good. And he had a big looming presence and he had 5 o'clock shadow at 10 a.m. And he'd give you that scruff and he just smelled like grandpa. And it got better. So after that, we would get down in grandpa's bottom right drawer that he filled with full-size Hershey bars. Every Wrigley's product out there. We were not allowed to have juicy fruit gum though, because my mother did not like the smell of juicy fruit gum. So I always ended up with Wintergreen Lifesavers. And if any of you know, Wintergreen Lifesavers are kind of fun because they throw off sparks if you chomp them in a dark room. And then always in the bottom of that drawer, there were boxes of rubber bands because of course he needed them in his office. This represented stability in my young life. This represented things that were good and easy to understand. And we like that. As people, we like stability and we like the things that make us feel good. So imagine the day I walked into that office and my grandfather was no longer sitting behind the desk. Now it was my father. So my grandfather had passed of one of those sudden cardiac events where you were here one second and gone the next. He was only in his early 60s when this happened. And my father was the oldest of 7 children and was now expected to take over the business. Well, when I was writing my book, The Rubber Band Resilient Leader, I thought, who should I start with? Where should my interviews begin? I'm like, I bet Dad has a story. Don't they all? So I went to him and I said, tell me about that time when you were expected now to take over. You were so disrupted. He goes, it was the worst time ever. He said, I was 42 years old, oldest of the family. Everyone was looking to me. I didn't know everything about the business. My father kept many things from us. I didn't know where the records were. He said, I was confused. I was afraid. I was angry. I was guilty. Couldn't I have done something else? I said, well, how did you move through it? And he said, well, I just knew I had to do it for my family and my siblings' families. We all had young kids. Well, what my father went through is very common. Adversity causes many common reactions, but what's not as common is that skill set. What do you do after the reaction? And many of us have learned that in this last year as we have been so incredibly disrupted. But that's what resilience is. It's what do we do? Do we rely on others? Do we not make it up? Or do we build a skill set so that when we do face these things that are stretching us, that we have the tools we need? Well, everybody has something. And if you don't have it now, it's coming. I just got back from a conference where a speaker stood up and said, there's going to be another disruption. And there's going to be another disruption. And there's going to be another disruption. And before COVID, I would throw this quote up there and people like, yeah, stuff's coming, sure. I think now we're just so in tune with the fact that we need these skills and our teams need these skills. So it's not just a personal pursuit, but we need to be working with our teams as well. Well, back to my father. Every day for the rest of his working career, he sat with this symbol framed above his office. He found out that the Chinese symbols for crisis mean a time of danger and a time of opportunity. And he lived by that mantra for the rest of his days. Well, I remember when we delivered this to his office, I was about 13 years old and my mom said, we're going downtown. I got something to take to your father. And I thought, I don't get it. I didn't have a crisis. I didn't know really what that meant. My crisis was Craig Tooley didn't sit next to me on the bus and I couldn't find a science partner that was smarter than me. So I didn't do as well as I wanted to. Those were crises, right? At every age and at every point in our life, our crisis looked different. Well, my crisis came wrapped in the package of my youngest child, my fourth child, Merritt Joy. So when the time when Merritt was born, I had a 7-year-old, a 4.5-year-old, and a 2.5-year-old. So you throw one more child in the mix and you might say, oh yeah, that was a crisis, Kathy, I can get it. I see now. Now, what was really the crisis was at about 11 weeks old, she started to do this funny hiccup thing. She'd do like, I thought, well, that's odd. My other kids didn't do that, but she seemed pretty normal. Well, as it continued for a couple more weeks, I called the pediatrician and I said, she's doing this thing. I've never seen it. She said, well, if she's still doing it in a couple weeks, bring her on in. I said, okay. A couple weeks go by, we go to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician says, oh, Kathy, that doesn't look quite right. Let's send you to Children's Hospital. Let's send you to Pittsburgh Children's Hospital, world-class hospital, and have it checked out. So they take my baby, they wrap her in a little baby straitjacket, they tie it up, and they take her away for 2.5 hours, where she has 23 electrodes put on her head so they can measure her brain activity. The doctor comes back and she kind of has that pale pallor of being in a hospital, and she talks quietly. And that's when you know you better be prepared, because a crisis might be being served up on your plate that day. And she says, those are seizures. They're kind of the worst type of seizures a baby can have. They're called infantile spasms. And we're going to have to admit you and do more work. Well, this news led us on a year-long pursuit to find out what was wrong with my daughter. She didn't eat well. She slept about 20 hours a day. And at one point, the doctor says, well, we're kind of waiting on more tests because we've done them all, and we're just hoping something's wrong with her brain. I was like, how can you say you hope something's wrong with her brain? He said, well, I think something might be wrong with her cells, and that's worse. And I didn't understand. I said, tell me more. He said, I think it might be metabolic. And I said, metabolic. I'm trying to race in my brain for the right word. I said, what's it mean? He said, her cells might not metabolize food into energy properly. I said, what do we do? He said, there's only a couple places in the country that test for that. So off we went to Atlanta for testing. We waited 3 long months for those test results to come back. And when they did, I got a phone call on a Friday night, 7 p.m. on a Friday. When your phone rings at 7 p.m. on a Friday and it says Pitt Chill Hosp, it's not a call you want to pick up, because you know another opportunity for crisis might be on your plate. I picked up the phone and the doctor said, she does indeed have a metabolic disorder. She has a mitochondrial dysfunction. Her cells are not turning food into energy properly. And the best we can hope for is 2 years. Wow. Now I had my disruption. Well, I'm happy to report that Merritt Joy is now 19 years old. There she is with my 88-year-old father. She's never been hospitalized again. And I share her story, not because it's terribly unique, but I'm hoping that you identify with that we all have something, right? And especially after this year, we know there's probably going to be another and another. So it's important for you personally and for the teams that you work with to build that rubber band resilience. So I don't have time to go through all of the process of rubber band resilience, but we're going to hit on a few and have a couple more fun stories. So there's 3 stages to becoming more rubber band resilient. First, there's the reaction stage. That's the stretch. Then the reframing. That's where we either snap or snap back. There's the re-energizing stage. That's when we hold things together. Well, I developed the rubber band resilient curve, and it looks a little like this. And if we can think about COVID and the rubber band resilient curve, we had some shock, right? When this first happened. We're closing down for 2 weeks though, so there's some optimism. We're going to move ahead quickly. But then we know everything kind of lost control. Well, I do believe that right now in this country, we are reframing it. We're starting to think more about how this affected us. Where's the opportunity in this crisis? And finally, we're going to re-energize. We might still slip into doubt once in a while. We might still feel the stress, but eventually these things do build us. So if by chance you happen to have a rubber band close by, I happen to have a great big one, hold it up. If you don't stretch it, right, it goes nowhere. But that stretch has a property in it. And you learn this in 8th grade or 9th grade science class, and someone out there's probably raising their hand. I know it, Kathy. And when we go through this stretch, that is actually called potential energy. Some people guess kinetic, that's when it's already, in the air, but this is potential energy. So when we are most stretched, we are full of potential energy. And now just because it's fun, and if you do have that rubber band, and if you feel that stretch, when you were stretched, you were filled with potential energy, you can just on the count of 3, do a big old 1, 2, 3, and shoot that thing. Now, you've not lived till you have seen 1,200 accountants in a ballroom in Las Vegas shoot rubber bands, because that is fun. We almost got kicked out for them aiming at the chandeliers, but it's fun at any age. And it just, shows, and it's an exercise you can do with your teams, do it in one of your team meetings. Like, we might feel stretched, but we got this potential energy. So moving on to some of those stages, the first stage is the reaction phase. And when I work with groups, we go through many tips and tactics under each stage to move through these. So just a couple that I'll share with you today due to time. Honor initial reactions. That first night when I got that news, I ate pizza and look at my wine glass, right? When we're in the early stages of a disruption, we go to guttural responses. We want emotional healing. We want things that make us feel good, but we can't live in that area. Next, not all reactions are the same. And this is so important when we work with teams. And when I do my team training, this is a big thing we spend some time on. How do we work with teams when people are reacting in different ways? And right now we're seeing different reactions, right? And every time, I call these the re-entry reactions. You might be dealing with us on a team that you're on. How do we maneuver through, and how do we honor and work together and build a collaborative team while honoring reactions? Because your reactions do have incredible power. They affect people in many ways. One of the best things that you can do during the reaction phase, though, is to control some reactions. And I have a great story about Facebook and how when they sold your information, they waited. They just waited and waited, and they never came out with a statement to the press. They waited 5 days before they came out. And I'm like, that's an awfully long time to control a response. But when they did come out, they had their chief COO come out, and she said, Sheryl Sandberg came out and said, we were trying to get to the bottom of it. We didn't want to give the wrong news. Well, this is another whole thing about reactions, because pauses actually have power. And sometimes we forget that when we're in the throes of a big disruption. We got to solve it right away. People want answers right away. And I do an exercise with teams where we talk about how can we reframe that, where we have to be doing something for someone all the time. How are we able to ask for pauses in the right and appropriate way? Well, moving on, the next stage is called the reframing stage. And that's where the good stuff happens. That's where we start to find the opportunities in the disruption. And this is the place where you want to stretch and get that potential energy, but not so much that you snap, right? I want to tell you how this works. Do you remember back in like high school, you changed your hair, like I had really long hair in high school and then it's short, or you changed your part, then you'd walk by and you do one of these, or maybe you've changed your hair color recently and you walk by and like, ooh, I look different, right? It feels weird when we make changes. It doesn't feel comfortable, but that's what happens in this reframing stage. We change and we have to get used to a new normal, for lack of a better word. Well, in this first one, I just want to take you to camp to tell you how this works. First thing that I always recommend in reframing is changing the language. So I send my kids to camp every year. Yes, it's great. So number 1 goes, number 2 goes, and then number 3, he's very animated. His name's Graham. He's 22 now. But he's like, Mom, when do I get to go to camp? I want to go. I'm like, dude, you're 5. You have to wait till you're 7. Well, finally he gets to go to camp, and off he goes with his big brother. And I go to pick him up and I say, Graham, how was camp? What'd you learn? And I'm expecting him to come back with some good stuff, because I know they teach good stuff at this camp. And finally I say to him, he's not giving me the answers I want. He's like, I did canoeing and I did the ropes course. I'm like, no, but what'd you do in the cabin? And he couldn't come up with the answer. Finally I said, didn't you have to clean the cabin? He's like, oh no, Mom, at camp, you don't have to clean the cabin. You get to clean the cabin. See, those counselors have done the ninja mind trick that we all need to do when we are reframing a situation. We have to change the language around it. We don't have to, we get to. Where are the opportunities? So reframing and changing that language is one of the first steps. Well, I go through several when I'm presenting about how to reframe. We don't have time to get to them today, but I'm going to share a little bit about the next phase, which is the re-energizing phase, because good stuff happens there. So excuse me as I scroll through, I'll just talk it through. We talk about managing fear, because fear can make you snap. We talk about getting creative in the reframing stage. I have some great resources on how to drag that creativity out of your team and how to come up with those ideas that we share. But here's the re-energizing phase. I have to get to it because there's more stories about the rubber band. I talked about stretching it and snapping it, but in Akron, Ohio, the Alliance Rubber Band was founded in 1923. Who knew that the rubber band was also from Akron, Ohio? I never did till I started researching it. The very first commercial application of the rubber band was to wrap it around the newspapers. And William Spencer was working for Goodyear Tire and Rubber, and he formulated and founded these rubber bands. So when I reached out to his daughter, who owns the Alliance Rubber Band Company, I said, hey, Bonnie, tell me about a time when you were disrupted in the rubber band industry. And she's like, oh, that's easy. That was the great rubber crisis of 2009. Who knew? I did not know that. And she said, yes. She says, imports went way up from China. We couldn't get our raw material. And I just called everybody in. I said, we got to solve this problem. We have to move forward. I don't want to lay anyone off. We're a family here. And she said, I asked for ideas every day. We got creative. We stopped selling 2-cent rubber bands and we started selling $10 embossed with names dog bowls. We went into the latex industry. She said, in the end, the disruption was the beginning of greatness for our company. So this is probably one of my favorite phases to talk about when I do a full keynote or a half-day training, because this is when the good stuff starts to come out. And in it, we talk about taking control of part of the disruption. I took control of my daughter's feeding. We talk about personally energizing quite a bit, because you cannot re-energize you or your team or your organization if you are burned out, maxed out, worn out, stressed out. So I do a lot around that, telling several stories about how to reduce stress and re-energize an organization. I have a great bear story that we'll have to save for another time. So I just want to leave you with one last concept about, there's a little bit more about what happens in the re-energizing stage. First, I want to thank you for this time. Before I finish with this last story, I want to thank Kim and Infinite Speakers. And if you have questions or would love to have a conversation about how we could work together, Kim can arrange that. And I would be happy to field any questions you might have on the types of ways that you could work with me to build a stronger teams. But one last story of resilience, I'll make it quick. Several years ago, we saw some of the worst wildfires that we'd seen in California. And I know right now, many of you are in Canada and you're starting to experience that. And there's anxiety that comes at this time of year. But these fires, called the Camp Fire fires, and were particularly devastating because they loss of life. 86 people lost their lives, over 100,000 acres were burned, 13,000 structures were lost. So there was one man who didn't lose his home, didn't lose his business. And he said, I'm going to open my business up. I'm going to just let everyone come in and I'll feed them because there's a restaurant there and I'll just take care of them. And this man's name is Ken Grossman, and he's the CEO and founder of Sierra Nevada Beer. Well, then he thought, I can do more. I know I can do more. So he started brewing a beer called Resilience Ale. And he got requests and requests and more requests from this. And people are like, we want to help. We want to help. So he said, I can't do this alone. So he sent the recipe out to other brewers. And he thought maybe he'd get a couple dozen of his buddies to brew beer, his other small microbrew beers. To date, Over 2,000 different breweries have brewed the Resilience Ale, and they've given back $25 million to this fund to help the victims. So I just end on this because we've talked about the rubber band stretching and snapping and that it holds things together, but I'm betting that many of you have had a rubber band ball at some point. And if you think about all that potential energy and all of those rubber bands, together we really do bounce. And we've seen that this year. So I'm wishing much energy to you and helping you bounce through this. And thank you so much for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy Perry. Make sure you show Kathy some love. Don't forget to show some reactions. Make sure to put some comments in the comments section. And Kathy has generously donated a copy of her book as well to one lucky participant. And again, I'm just going to close my eyes here as I scroll through everyone. And I'm going to figure out who is our lucky winner. It looks like Julie Paquin Fournier. Am I saying your name right? I hope I am, Julie. Make sure that you go ahead and message me your information so we can get Kathy's copy of her book out to you.
Your pronunciation is perfect, Kim.
Yes, winner. All right. Next up, we have Michael Kerr. Michael is a Canadian Hall of Fame speaker who travels the world researching, writing, and speaking about inspiring workplace cultures. His Inspiring Workplaces blog has been recognized as one of the top 30 workplace blogs in the world. Say that 5 times fast. Michael is also the author of 8 books, including The Jerk-Free Workplace, Hire, Inspire, and Fuel Their Fire, and The Humor Advantage, Why Some Businesses Are Laughing All the Way to the Bank. Please help me welcome Michael Kerr.
Thank you. Hello. Welcome, everybody. How are you doing? Let me ask you this question. On a scale of 9 to 10, how excited are you to be at this event? Are you at least a 9 out of 10? I so wish that we could be doing this in person where we could be high-fiving and hugging and shaking hands and licking each other's faces. And okay, maybe we wouldn't be licking each other's faces even in normal time, but you know what I mean. It would be awesome to be together in person, but let's be grateful that we have this technology, that we live in the age of Jetsons. I mean, can you imagine if I was doing this 20 years ago? I would probably be faxing my presentation to you, and I just don't think it would be the same. So I hope you're at least a 9 on a 9 out of 10 scale. I'm going to ask you a question that I have the pleasure of asking audiences all over the world. And that question is this: how many of you would like to go back to your jobs, whether that's working remotely in a hybrid situation or with the whole gang all together, knowing that for you to be even more effective, more productive, more resilient, more successful at whatever you do, you should be having at least a little bit more of this? And how many of you would like to end one of those bad hair days that we all are allowed to have, knowing that even on those days, you could still manage to leap through the front door of your house at the end of the workday and yell out, "Honey, I'm home." Now, I should explain what this is because some of you are probably a little frightened right now. This is the international symbol for having fun. It's the international symbol for putting humor to work. And you see, in normal pre-pandemic times, I have the great pleasure of traveling all over the world, researching, writing, and speaking about inspiring cultures, inspiring teams, and inspiring leaders. And so often, what they have in common is they embrace a spirit of fun in everything they do. They don't take themselves so seriously, and they strategically look for opportunities to inject some fun, to inject some humor into their workday, into their culture, into their business, to laugh all the way to the bank. Now, before I frighten anyone, I want to be clear: when I talk about bringing your sense of humor along for the ride to work, you do not have to sign up for a stand-up comedian class anytime soon. I'm not talking about being a stand-up comedian, the office joker. I'm not talking about telling jokes. I'm not even talking about being funny all the time. It's far more important, I think, to have a sense of fun, to do things in a spirit of fun, rather than trying to be funny. It's about a sense of balance and perspective. It is truly thought to be, by experts, one of our most human characteristics of all. So it's about being more real, more authentic, which some of the other speakers have talked about. It's about laughing at those things we have no control over, which these days is what, about 412% of the things I believe. And it's especially about laughing at ourselves. Is it not a truism, after all, that the more seriously a person takes themselves, the less seriously we tend to take that person, which is ironic because people take themselves seriously in the belief that everyone will take them more seriously, when the reality becomes, we're not taking you seriously, bucko, because you're taking yourself so bloody seriously. So it's about lightening up on ourselves and just bringing that lighter levity into our workplaces, about taking ourselves lightly in order to take our jobs seriously. And this has been studied by the International Group of Humor Studies, of which I've been a member for over 20 years, that you can grow that cosmic sense of humor by just practicing looking for the accidentally funny stuff in the world. The stuff that isn't supposed to be funny until you pause and then you do the quizzical golden retriever thing. Oh, when I was a senior manager in a former lifetime, I used to keep a humor file, an accidentally funny file. And this is one of the simplest things you can do to grow your sense of humor. Do it with your family, your team, just on your own. You will start finding this stuff everywhere. So as a senior manager, I had a file where I'd collect things like the time this woman from headquarters phoned me up and said, Mr. Kerr, I need to know the number of people in your department broken down by sex. And I remember thinking, I don't think I'm allowed to ask that question. I think HR will get upset at me. This stuff is everywhere. Warning labels. I spend a lot of time in normal times in hotels. And on hotel shower caps, they very often have a label that says, fits one head only. Like, what are people doing in their hotel shower caps? Christmas lights for indoor or outdoor use only. Church bulletin boards, sorry. Don't let worry kill you. Let the church help. You can find this stuff everywhere. So it's about embracing that just funny that's out there and bringing it into your workplace. And we know from so much research that this really is one of the most underappreciated, underutilized resources we all have at our disposal. We all have this. It's not about being an extrovert or being an introvert, or as I said, being funny. We know at an individual level, according to studies, people who bring a healthy sense of humor to work tend to be trusted more. There's a positive correlation between humor and trust. We tend to think they're more intelligent and, yes, fairly or not, more successful. We like them more. This isn't rocket science. We want to work with people who have a good sense of humor. At a team level, we know teams that embrace a lot of fun tend to be more collaborative and innovative. And at an organization level, organizations that embrace a spirit of fun as part of their culture tend to have lower employee turnover rates, lower absenteeism rates, lower presenteeism rates. You know what presenteeism is, right? When people show up at work, but not necessarily to work. So I want to talk about a few areas where humor can help you rocket in your workplace, starting with the biggest possible picture of humor just helping you to build a rocking, more inspiring, want to kind of workplace culture and environment. There's a company in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, called Argus Industries, and they have this wonderful mantra that I think we should all embrace. Work is hard enough as it is without making it any harder. And they embrace this fabulous mantra. They try to add a spirit of fun into everything they do. So they have fun meeting rules of the roads for how they conduct their meetings. They do all sorts of contests and games and celebrations where they involve the family members, because family members of employees are part of our support team. And we know from studies that when we connect with the family members, it's one of the most powerful things we can do to retain our employees and keep them engaged. And they do all sorts of rituals and traditions. Every inspiring workplace that I've studied around the world is a huge fan of rituals and traditions because they help to build a strong workplace culture. They create that sense of shared history. They give everyone something to look forward to and something to reminisce about. And there's no end of rituals and traditions you can do. Some of my clients kick off the week with a fun, wacky tradition just to get everyone inspired. Or a Wednesday hump day ritual where you help get everyone over the midweek hump. A Friday afternoon ritual where you get the team together and you celebrate your 3 best wins of the week. Some of my clients celebrate those wacky theme days. I put these all on my website, www.mikekerr. Today, we've got some good ones today. Today just happens to be official French Fries Day, Nitrogen Ice Cream Day, which is supposed to be very, very good. International Rock Day, not rock like rock and roll, but actual rocks to celebrate rocks. Barbershop Music Appreciation Day, Embrace Your Geekness Day. Oh, I'm all over that one. And Gruntled Workers Day, because we spend a lot of time talking about disgruntled workers, but never gruntled workers. So we can celebrate those theme days or make up your own theme days, like Argus Industries does. They have all sorts of different ones they do. They do one called Third Person Thursdays, where everybody refers to themselves with their own name. So they talk about themselves in the third person. So if I was working there, I'd be saying things like, hey, Mike's looking forward to the meeting this afternoon. Hey, Mike has an idea. Like, how stupid is that? But you can't help but walk around with a smile all day. And one of the biggest, most fun rituals that they do at Argus, the craziest one, is starting on December 1st. They have an employee show up in a gorilla costume, and he hides somewhere in this gorilla costume in the manufacturing plant in the front office, waiting to scare an unsuspecting employee. Well, another employee secretly videotapes the transaction of all these mostly big blue-collar burly guys going, ah! And then they create this montage video and they show it at their year-end party, and it's become a huge part of their culture. Now, Argus Industries is a phenomenal success story, unprecedented growth within their industry, a virtual 0% employee turnover rate over the last 10 years, which is unheard of. But let's be clear, it's not because a gorilla shows up on December 1st every year. Wouldn't that be awesome if that was the solution to our workplace challenges? Hey, Johnson, get me 100 gorilla costumes. It's because of what the gorilla represents. It's because Argus intentionally focuses on building a rocking great culture. They intentionally focus on building a culture that drives outrageous results because they understand that culture is their number one competitive advantage. It is your organization. I don't care if you're small or big, nonprofit, government, private sector. Your culture is your number one competitive advantage. It drives all of our success. A Harvard Business Study found that how an organization hires, trains, and treats its employees accounts for anywhere from 30 to 300% growth over their competitors by focusing intentionally on their culture. And there are dozens of studies that confirm this. I've interviewed hundreds of CEOs and presidents around the world. One question I always ask is, hey, what's been more important in terms of your success? Your strategy, your business strategy, or your culture? 98% say it's our culture. But here's what great leaders, here's what great employees, here's what great teams and businesses get is that great cultures don't just happen. You can't fake it. You can't buy your culture at IKEA. You wouldn't understand the instructions. So you've got to be intentional about building a rocking great culture, which I get into in longer workshops in a really in-depth way, but it starts by just being intentional. And you know, even if mixing humor into your culture with an intentional focus on culture, and remember, there's a chicken and egg, or maybe a rubber chicken and egg relationship here between humor and culture. Humor helps drive a more rocking culture, but it also reflects a more rocking culture. Even if adding humor into your workplace doesn't help you achieve all the success that I suggest it will, that my research shows it does, that I talk about in my book, The Humor Advantage. What would you rather have? The same level of success and less fun, or the same level of success and a little bit more of this? We have to remember, work has a huge impact on our lives. It affects our marriages and family lives, our physical and mental health, our personal identity, our growth as human beings, who we socialize with. It affects where you live. I mean, how else can you explain North Dakota, right? I'm thinking on North Dakota because I assume there's like 12 people who live there. And you may have noticed it's a wee bit of a time sucker. It is the single biggest use of our energy and time in this short journey called life. And none of us, I guarantee you, are going to be sitting on the rocking chair, looking back at our work days and thinking to ourselves, man, if I had to do it all over again, I'd be more of a fun sucker. I'd work in a more soul-sucking, fun-sucking work environment and take myself even more seriously. Nobody is going to think that, I guarantee you. So we owe it to our employees. We owe it to the families of our employees, to our customers, to build as inspiring as rocking a workplace culture, because this thing called work matters a lot. Second thing we can do with humor is we can stand out from the herd to be heard. I don't know who said this, but somebody once said, advertising is the price you pay for being boring. Well, we know that when organizations rock it with both their culture and especially a fun culture, they become the hunted when it comes to attracting employees. You look at a company like Zappos or Southwest Airlines, known for their culture, known for their spirit of fun. They don't have to go looking for employees. It's insane how many employees go looking for them. They've become the hunted. And in so many small ways, we can humanize our businesses. We can humanize our organizations to stand out from the herd with a little bit of humor. I phoned up Shutterfly, the online web sharing photos site a few years ago, and I got the usual annoying automated voicemail response, right, with all those endless options. But then they rocked it with their humor. At the end of all these options, I got this option. If you want to hear all these options again, but in pirate, press 9. Well, who wouldn't want to hear the pirate option? So of course I pressed 9, and there was a pirate. Ah, matey, if you think your package has been lost at high seas, press number 3. Like, how awesome is that? I just fell in love with these guys, and there's so many simple ways that you can stand out from the herd with just a little bit of humor at every touch point with your customers. And then of course you can carry this over into a third huge benefit of using humor, and that's to create a more positive customer service experience. You know, I always tell people when it comes to customer service, customer experience, stop providing good customer service. Stop it. And here's why. We all expect good customer service, don't we? So all we're doing by providing good customer service is staying out of the doghouse. We're just staying out of customer service jail. We're not doing anything to rock it unless we exceed those expectations or do something a little different. I was on a 2-week fitness kick at a hotel in Toronto many years ago, and I run into my director of first impressions at this hotel because I had checked in late the night before, didn't see anyone. It was a cleaning lady who looked like she was way past retirement age. I asked her where the gym was. She looked me up and down, and she was probably 20 years older than me. She looked me up and down, gave me the most frightening, flirtatious smile I've had in years, poked me in the stomach, and said, "You don't need a fitness facility, honey." I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm in love with you. Then she insisted on walking me down to the gym. She flirted with me the whole way. I think she was my very first cougar, frankly. And she was just hilarious. Her natural sense of humor was just awesome. So we got to the gym and I turned to her and I said, "Why are you like this? Is this a great place to work? You know, I research awesome places to work. Should I come research this place?" And she said, "Oh God, no, it's horrible." Which was not the answer I was expecting. So I said, "Well, why are you like this?" She said, "Well, I finally figured out at this late stage in life that when I'm like this, the days go by twice as fast. I have way less stress. I get bigger tips. It's not rocket surgery. And when I'm like this, I build up goodwill capital. When I have a favor to ask my boss or my coworkers, guess what they always say to me?" You know how she put it? She said, "No one turns this down." She was just amazing. We have to remember that humor has an incredibly powerful role to play in terms of building trust and building relationships with our customers and clients. A fourth key way that we have to rock it with our humor is to remember the power of humor when we're communicating in the workplace, because communication is everything and everything is communication. But it's not just what we say, it's how we say things, isn't it? That drives people nuts. So we have to understand there's a huge power in using humor to break down barriers, to build relationships, to have our messages stand out from the herd, to be heard, and to disagree with one another without being disagreeable. Have you ever worked with a seagull? Oh man, you know why I talk about seagulls? Because what do seagulls do to us sometimes? Crap all over us. So have you ever worked with those seagulls who just, they crap all over every little thing? It'll never work. We tried it in 1971. We don't have the money. We don't have the time. That's a stupid idea. It's against our policy. One of the best signs I saw in my life on a manager's door: when policy fails, try thinking. And if we try thinking, then we should understand that taking the time to deliver our messages, whether it's an email message, whether it's a safety sign in the workplace, whether it's in our meetings, humor can help us so much. My goodness, in our meetings, one of the most soul-sucking places we have at work. And yet I think meetings should be awesome. Meetings should help build the culture we want and also reflect the culture that we want. I think people should be excited about going to a meeting at work. So let's make sure we're having fun in them. A Scientific America study even found that the most effective, most productive, most innovative meetings, why? Because Ha plus, this is not a chef's hat or a pope's hat. This is supposed to be a giant light bulb. Ha plus ha equals aha. Humor is one of the biggest catalysts for creative thinking. So when we infuse our meetings with a little bit of humor, opening up with a fun icebreaker, you know, having everyone do the fun dance, or passing imaginary energy ball, or having everyone wear a label where you answer some goofy question, one of those just my name is, or you use an alter ego name game thing to add a little fun. There's so many ways of doing this. We used to have a rumor mill section in our meeting when we were dealing with lots of change like right now. And the way it worked was you had to lean into the table. You had to look up and down and say, word on the street is. And then that made it safe for people to talk about their rumors. So there's no, I've got anybody wants this, I will give you a list of over 100 fun ways to add a little bit of humor to your meetings. And the last way that we need to remember to embrace the spirit of fun and humor is to embrace the power of humor to help us be more resilient and manage stress. We know it's a triple threat. Humor is a triple threat because it helps us change how we think about a problem or a challenge. It relaxes us physically. When you laugh, you massage your muscles where you pick up a lot of tension, right? You can tell when people are stressed out, so it massages those muscles. It increases the oxygen going to the brain, and oxygen going to the brain at work, highly recommended. According to a Simon Fraser University study, laughter works faster to relax our bodies than either Valium or vodka. Two things you probably shouldn't bring to the office, kids. And you gotta like this one. According to Dr. William Fry, 20 or 30 seconds of good hearty belly laughter is the same as 2 minutes working out on a rowing machine. So now you know what I do? I just go down to my local gym and I just laugh out. I just laugh at the people working out. It's just so stupid. And even fake laughter has some of the same benefits as real laughter. So just fake it till you make it. And the third way that it helps us is it breaks the tension in a tense situation. We all have stories of that. Maybe a meeting where somebody says something so utterly, unbelievably stupid, the oxygen disappears from the room until something funny happens. And then it's like a safety release valve. I remember being on this horrible flight where people were throwing up on the flight because of the turbulence. The flight attendant came out to clean up the vomit after the turbulence settled out, and she did something so remarkable that we all have the power to do when things get that crazy. She put down her little rag, she leapt up in the middle of her plane, and she yelled out, "God, I love my job!" And for a brief moment, I think we all thought, she snapped, we're gonna die. But then everybody smiled and it was just like, oh, we can breathe again. And sometimes that's all it takes is just doing something a little goofy, you know, getting up and doing the fun dance. I used to phone up when I was overwhelmed at work, I'd phone up my boss and I'd say, hey, yeah, it's Mike, sorry, I'm too busy to talk right now. And then I'd hang up. I did this for years. He never phoned back once. Putting up fun signs, fun posters, a mascot to remind us to lighten up, a humor bulletin board, creating a humor first aid kit, stocked with things that are going to give us a little fun. When people were upset at me, I used to show up at their work wearing this. It's like a get out of jail free card, right? When you go and somebody's upset at you, say, is there a problem? Do we need to talk? Do we need to go outside? So look for these simple opportunities. And again, rituals and traditions are an absolutely powerful way to infuse our lives and workplaces. The second way that it helps us, though, in terms of dealing with stress and being more resilient, is it helps us reward ourselves in the face of a bad day. You know, with search and rescue dogs, it's been shown that we're search and rescue dogs that are dealing with a huge disaster where all they're doing are finding dead bodies, that the dogs will get so depressed sometimes, they'll go sit down. They'll go, this job sucks. You go try it for a while, buddy. So what they figured out to do is they bury a live member of the search and rescue team in the rubble, in the avalanche somewhere, so that the dog keeps finding a live person and feels good about themselves. And they do the fun dance the way dogs do. So if it works with dogs, maybe it works with people. So let's remember the power of humor to reward the positives at work, because we have to create a workplace culture that is infused with celebration and recognition and praise, where we're thanking each other. And let's remember the power of humor to pull people out of the dungeon when they're having a bad day. And finally, the last way it helps us mentally is it helps us, what Kathy was talking about earlier, to reframe difficult situations, challenging situations, by finding the funny in it. Humor reminds us that we can choose our response instead of react, that we can choose a more positive emotional response instead of instantaneously reacting. Years ago, I was speaking to 1,000 people at a safety awareness conference. It was the one and hopefully only time I fell off a stage at a safety awareness conference. So I felt a little bit like, you know, one of these, a little bit of a bonehead. but I knew I had to reframe it, right? So I rolled over onto my back and I simply leaned into my lavalier microphone and I said, I'll now be taking questions from the floor, which is what we all have to do when we fall off the stage in life. So remember, there is incredible power in humor. Life and work is too important to be taken seriously, as somebody once said. It's not the big things that we do at work, it is the simple little things we do consistently to be more intentional about our culture and to bring a little more humor and levity into our workplace that truly can make a difference. And before I say goodbye, I want to give you just one practical joke here you can take back to your team, a cheesy little practical joke. All you need to do is get a cheap little plastic cup like so, hide it up under your armpit, and then pretend you had a horrible night's sleep. You woke up with this horrible sore neck, and so somebody offers to massage you, maybe in your family. You try this, and then you say, no, I've been seeing this physiotherapist. I'm just going to try a little maneuver my physio's been doing, and let me see if I can't work this out. Ow! I think I did it wrong. And if you do this effectively enough, you would not believe how quickly the blood will drain from some people's faces. It's just astounding. Folks, I want to thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. Kim, thank you for your support. Thank you to all the other speakers
for rocking it. You guys are amazing. I'm honored to be with you. If I can be of service to any of you, please reach out, get in touch with me. If you want my free copy of my ebook, 340 Ways, just reach out to me and I will get one of those to you as well. Thank you, everyone. And remember to keep having this day in and day out. Thank you.
That was awesome. If anybody doesn't have a smile on their face at this point, there's something wrong with you. I have an ebook from Michael, Hire, Inspire, and Fuel Their Fire, and someone is going to receive that free. So again, I shall close my eyes. I'm scrolling down to the very bottom of the list here. And it looks like Suzanne Bouchard. Suzanne, make sure you message me, please. And we will go ahead and get you a free copy of Hire, Inspire, and Fuel Their Fire. Michael has also donated a copy of the Jerk-Free Workplace. So I am going to scroll through once again and see who we can find here. And it looks like Daniela. Oh, and Daniela, I do not want to butcher your name, so you're going to have to help me out here. Noguera. Daniela. So please make sure you message me, Daniela, and we will get you that copy of Mike's ebook. And of course, he is going to bring some energy to your next live or virtual event. So make sure you reach out to us if you are interested in booking Michael Kerr. Thanks so much, Michael. We really appreciate your time. All right, next up we have Bill Stainton. And Bill, I have found you. I'm going to unmute you as I introduce you and put you in the spotlight. And let me give you guys Bill's introduction here. In a changing world, innovation is no longer an option. New challenges require innovative solutions. But how do you come up with these solutions? How do you teach your brain to be more innovative? Where do the breakthrough ideas really come from? Our speaker today says it's not only possible to become more innovative, it's actually fun. Bill Stainton is a Hall of Fame keynote speaker who helps leaders and their teams turn creativity into money. I like that. For 15 years, he produced the most successful regional comedy TV show in the United States, where he won 29 Emmy Awards, thus shattering his dream of winning 30 Emmy Awards. He's also written for HBO, Comedy Central, The Tonight Show, in addition to being a regular contributor to the Seattle Business Magazine. Today, he's going to help us get in touch with our own innovative smarts as he presents Connect the Dots, Breakthrough Thinking in a Changing World. Please join me in welcoming Bill Stainton.
Do you like sitting next to weird people? I don't like sitting next to weird people. I think that's true for most of us, don't you? Especially if you've actually ridden on a city bus, because, weird. Here's the problem with that, though. It turns out that the weird people, they're almost never really weird, right? I mean, they're just different. And when we avoid people who are different, experiences that are different, ideas that are different, We're missing out on the connections that are the building blocks of innovation. Your next breakthrough might be just one connection away, and if you miss it, it's gone. A few years ago, I was flying home to Seattle from New York. I had an aisle seat, and sitting next to me in the middle seat was nobody. I know that's like getting an upgrade, right? So I'm like doing my little internal happy dance when just before the doors close, one last passenger gets on the plane. And she was different. I didn't take a picture, that would have been rude, but this isn't too far off. So as she's shuffling and wheezing down the aisle, I'm looking around, I'm thinking, wait, don't panic, Bill, it's a big plane, come on, what are the odds? I'll tell you what the odds were, 100%. Yep, she stands right, stops right beside me, pokes me with her bony finger, points to my empty middle seat and says, please, I am there. No more happy dance. So I did what you might have done. I put on my headphones. And I escaped into my music. Music has always been my escape. Who's with me on this? Yeah. So for the next 5 hours, I escape. Beatles, Beethoven, Miles Davis. And then because I was reading a book, a biography about one of my musical heroes, Stravinsky, I cap it off by listening to his magnificent Firebird Suite. As we approach Seattle, middle seat pokes me again. Apparently it's time for the obligatory final descent conversation. You know this one? He's home for you. I'm sorry, what? He's home for you. Is home for, oh, you mean Seattle? Yes. How about you? No, I have a long way to go. I go to Russia. Yeah, that's a long way. I have not been there since I was young woman. I was teacher. And here we go. Teacher, okay. So what did you teach? Music. Did you teach Russian music? Of course. Okay, see, that's it's actually kind of amazing because I was just listening. I mean, like just now to Stravinsky's Firebird Suite. Oh, Stravinsky, the Firebird. I was with him when he wrote it. And then the plane pulled up to the gate. I never saw her again. I had just flown across the continent, separated by only 5 inches and a pair of headphones from possibly the most fascinating person I would ever meet. And I didn't know it until the last 5 minutes. I had completely written her off for 5 hours because she was different from me. How often do we do this? Miss out on an amazing connection because it involves someone or something different from us. And when we miss those connections, we miss the opportunities to grow, to create, to innovate. And right now, as we're emerging from a changed world into a changing world, we need innovation. Innovation drives progress. Innovation drives profits. We need your innovation. What? Mine? No. Leave me out of this, Bill. I'm not one of those crazy creative types. I'm not innovative. Oh, stop it. The only reason people don't think they're innovative is because they don't understand what innovation is. They think innovation is the lightning bolt that comes down from above and it only strikes the gifted few. Here's the secret. We are all the gifted few. For 15 years, I was the producer of the longest running, highest rated, and most award-winning regional comedy TV show in the United States. It was called Almost Live. For 15 years, our job, week after week after week, was to be innovative, on demand. And let me tell you something. When your paycheck depends on you being innovative, you can't afford to wait for a lightning bolt. Fortunately, as I learned over those 15 years, innovation is not about some magic lightning bolt. Innovation is all about connecting dots. So, okay, what are these dots? Well, these dots can be anything. Ideas, experiences, an elderly woman in the middle seat. Every article you read, every podcast you listen to, every person you interact with, that's a dot. And the more dots you have, the more connections you can make. The more connections, the more chances of an innovative breakthrough. Here's how it works. This is a sheet of Avery dots. Avery dots. There's a lot of dots here, which means a lot of connections. That's good. That's good. This is what it looks like inside the brain of an innovative thinker. Some people's brains, though, look more like this. Very sad. Not a lot of connections going on here. This is not the brain of a lifelong learner. How many of you know someone like this? Yeah. How many of you are related to someone like this? I mean, it just stands to reason, doesn't it? That the more dots you have, the more connections you can make, which means the odds of any one of those connections being that breakthrough innovation, that breakthrough idea that's going to move the needle for you, your business, your industry, or your world increase dramatically. But what do you notice about these dots? What do you notice about them? Yeah, they're all the same, aren't they? They're all 3/4 inch navy blue. Now, if all of your dots are 3/4 inch navy blue, if you only ever read the same kind of articles or same kinds of blogs, and they're always about the same subject, if you only listen to the same kinds of podcasts or the same music, if you only watch the same newscasts, if you only ever hang out with the same kinds of people, if all of your dots are 3/4 inch navy blue, then most of your innovative ideas are going to be 3/4 inch navy blue. It's better than nothing, but not exactly breakthrough, right? You know what I mean? But what if your dot collection looked more like this? Oh, now we're talking. Now you start connecting these dots, and there's no telling what color your connections, your creative ideas will be. A blue dot and a yellow dot make a green idea. And what if these dots were also different sizes and different shapes? What if your dots, the ideas, the experiences, the people in your life were different colors, different sizes, different shapes, different beliefs? Can you see the difference that would make in the quantity and the quality of your innovative ideas? Because you never know which dot is going to be the one that leads to the breakthrough. You never know which connection is going to be that missing piece that completes your particular puzzle. January 10th, 1987. It's a Saturday. It's a show day for Almost Live, my TV show. And we are pumped. We are pumped because we've gotten a genuine big name to be our guest on tonight's show. Our guest tonight is this guy, Johnny Depp. Okay, he was younger then, but still, Johnny Depp. Now, Johnny was shooting a TV show at the time, just up the road in Vancouver, BC. It was called 21 Jump Street, and we got him. Happy dance until the morning of the show. I get a phone call. Bill, it's Johnny Depp. This, by the way, this is what phones looked like back then. Remember that? Remember how painful? Yeah, listen, I'm not going to be able to make it tonight. No, they scheduled reshoots for Jump Street, and I can't get out of it. I'm really sorry, but I have to cancel. String of bad words. You know this feeling, don't you? You've been there. You've had this happen to you, haven't you? I mean, maybe not the whole TV show Johnny Depp thing, but this has happened in your world, right? You know, you think you've done everything right, and you have. you've planned it all out. You've done your homework. You've done the due diligence. And then the universe just pulls the rug right out from under you, right? This is happening. Maybe it's a flat tire on the way to that important meeting. Maybe a supplier goes out of business. Or maybe it's, I don't know, a global pandemic that shuts down the entire world. But you know what this feels like, right? Okay, so now we're in a panic. I call an emergency meeting and we try and come up with a guest for tonight's show. How about one of them Seahawks? No, they're out of town this week. What about that cute new anchor at Como TV? No, she's in rehab. She was. And on it goes, and it's starting to look hopeless when all of a sudden one of my writers, in fact, it was my lowest paid writer, pops his head up and says, I might be able to do something with with liquid nitrogen. Clearly, he did not understand the situation. I mean, we're trying to come up with a guest for tonight's show, and he's babbling on about liquid nitrogen. Here's a pro tip. You can't interview liquid nitrogen. So we ignore him. We write him off for as long as we can until all of a sudden we just really get desperate. And then it's like, all right, Bill. His name was also Bill. Bill, tell us about the liquid nitrogen. And that's when Bill started to paint a picture for us. Hey guys, no, this could work. I mean, liquid nitrogen, it's very cold. You take an onion, throw it in the liquid nitrogen, take a pair of tongs, pull the onion out, hit it with a hammer, it shatters like glass. Cool. No, guys, it gets better. You take a marshmallow, big old marshmallow, throw it in the liquid nitrogen. I take those tongs, pull the marshmallow out, pop it in my mouth, bite down, smoke pours out of my nose and mouth. Cool. And that night, Bill, my lowest paid writer, whose full name was Bill Nye, became Bill Nye, the science guy. Why? Because he was different from us. We were all writers and producers. Bill Nye was and is a science guy. He saw the world differently than we did. He was the different colored dot. And you never know which dot is going to be the one that leads to the breakthrough. You never know which connection is going to be that missing piece of the puzzle. In 1440, Johannes Gutenberg connected a wine processor with movable type and created the printing press. He changed the world. In 1962, a collaborative team of 4 young men from Liverpool, England, connected blues, Motown, skiffle, and pop, and created the Beatles. They changed the world. In 2016, Burger King connected a Whopper with a burrito and created the Whopperito. The jury technically is still out on that one, but you see my point. You see my point. My point is this, that virtually every great invention, virtually every great idea, virtually every great thought that went on to change the world, or even just a small part of the world, came from someone or a collaboration of someone's seeing 2 or more different dots and connecting them in a way that nobody else ever had before. And you can do it too. You can be that innovator that drives your business, your industry, your world to a new level. You only have to do 2 things. Be a dot collector and be a dot connector. Can you do that? Of course you can. I started off by telling you about one plane trip. I want to end by telling you about another plane trip. I wasn't on this second plane trip, but my friend Jack was. Now, Jack made a lot of money as the owner of a large marketing firm, but now Jack is semi-retired. He lives in the Bahamas on the Turks and Caicos Islands. Now, if and when you ever think of Turks and Caicos, you probably think of it as a playground for the rich and famous, which it is. But, people live there too, like my friend Jack. So on this particular day, Jack was flying home from a business meeting in New York. Now, like me, Jack had an aisle seat. Unlike me, Jack's aisle seat was in first class, but like me, the seat next to Jack was empty. Until just before the doors close, one last passenger gets on the plane, sits right next to Jack. But unlike me, Jack is a natural dot connector, which is why he was so successful in business. So Jack strikes up a conversation with his seatmate, whose name turns out to be Patty. And fairly soon, Patty asks Jack, what he does for a living. Oh, well, I used to own a marketing company, but now I'm semi-retired, so I get to spend my days indulging in my passion and my hobby, which is music. I'm a drummer and a blues singer. Well, Patty looked at Jack in his expensive tailored three-piece suit and said, you don't look much like a musician. Oh, that's because I just came from a business meeting, but 5 hours from now, I'm going to look completely different because you see, it's Wednesday. And every Wednesday, my neighborhood pub has an open jam session. And that's where I'm going to be. Tonight, 5 hours from now, I'm going to be playing drums and singing the blues. It's my favorite thing in the world. Yeah, I totally get it. I get what you mean. My husband's a musician and he says the exact same thing. Right. So you know what I'm talking about then, right? Yeah, it's a great hobby. Yeah, it really is. I mean, my husband does it professionally, but still. Oh, does he? Well, good for him. Good for him. It's not easy, is it? It's not easy to make a living as a musician. Good for him. Is he a solo performer or is he in a band? Or no, he's in a band. Well, that's just wonderful. Good for him. Is it anybody I might have ever heard of? Maybe the Rolling Stones. 5 hours later, Jack is playing drums in his blues club. They just started their second set when the door opens and in walks Patty with her husband. And that's the night my friend Jack spent an hour jamming with Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. You never know which dot is going to be the one that leads to that breakthrough. And if you miss it, it's gone. And along with it, the opportunities to grow, to create, to innovate. Once you miss it, it's gone. I missed out. I missed my opportunity. I missed my opportunity because I was unwilling to connect a dot that was sitting right next to me for 5 hours. Your opportunities, your dots, your breakthroughs, your innovations, they're all around you, just waiting for you to connect them. The ball's in your court.
Let's give a round of applause and make sure that we give some comments to Bill, how wonderful that is really an Emmy. Who would have thought? What a great presentation, and thank you, Bill, for joining us today. If you guys are interested in booking Bill for your live or virtual events, please make sure that you reach out to us, kim@infinitespeakers.com. Our very last speaker, and again, we are running ahead of schedule, is Sanjay Nath. And Sanjay, I have to tell you, he actually joined us last minute because our other speaker, Jeff, was booked for a presentation last minute. So thank you, Sanjay, for joining us. And sorry, you guys are getting feedback there, but I'm going to go ahead and read your introduction and hopefully that will stop. Sanjay Nath is an internationally renowned speaker who travels globally, sharing insights on leadership and performance. As a speaker in 2005, Sanjay became the youngest Canadian and third youngest in the world to earn his certified speaking professional designation. In 2018, Sanjay was inducted into the Canadian Speakers Hall of Fame. He started an international speaking business at 19 years of age. He wasn't even old enough to rent a car. He's the author of several books, including the 1080 Principle. Sanjay holds an undergraduate degree in mathematical engineering and a master's in business administration. He is best known for his trademark, the 10-80-10 Principle, which is a framework that helps individuals and teams improve performance. This methodology combines best practices with small wins to help empower audiences to reach their stretch goals. Please welcome Sanjay.
Thank you very much, Kim. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. It has been my experience that in these COVIDian times, that people in general are much busier. Not necessarily more productive and not necessarily making more money, but much busier. And the reason I say that is I want to say thank you for investing the time in being here. We're here for a very short period of time, and it's my hope in the short time we have today that what I share with you is both professionally and personally applicable, but at very minimum, I hope to be somewhat entertaining. What I'm going to share with you is a very high level of the philosophy that I go and I work with organizations to do. And like I said, I'm going to talk quickly and try to jam pack it to make it most valuable. So with that said, you can take any group and you can subdivide them into three groups. You got your top 10%, your bottom 10%, and your majority 80%. Top 10, bottom 10, majority 80. Let me define each group. The top 10, by their definition, they want to be there, right? They go early, they leave late, they never complain. When you say jump, they say how high while they're in the air, right? These are the people that are so motivated and excited by life, it's annoying, right? These are the people who wake up in the morning, they go look at themselves in the mirror, and they get jealous. Look at you, right? That's your top 10. On the other end of the spectrum is your bottom 10. Who are they? Well, just the opposite, right? They show up late, but to make up for it, they leave early, right? Always complaining, serious case of victimitis. Yeah. It always rains when I go golfing. Yeah. My spouse caught me cheating. In fact, they suffer from a very serious medical condition, which I made up. It's called optical rectomeris. It's a shitty view of the world. Yeah. Okay. So you got your top 10, you got your bottom 10, and you got a big chunk in the middle called the majority 80. By their definition, they will go to whichever group is more empowered. So if you're part of an organization where the top 10 is revered, where success is rewarded, where you're given accolades, attaboys, attagirls, this is called a dynamic organization. Why? Because the top 10 gets empowered, the majority 80 follows, and the organization moves forward. If you're part of an organization where the bottom 10 is revered, where it's cool to cut corners, to manipulate the system, to cheat, to steal, to lie, that is called government. Oh, no, sorry, that is called a static organization. So what happens is the bottom 10 gets empowered, they suck the life out of the majority 80, and the organization gets stuck, they're static, and they go nowhere. Okay. Before I go any further with this framework, 10-80-10 deals with the behaviors of human beings, and therefore it's not an exact science. What I mean by that is I say 10-80-10 because it rolls off the tongue better than saying 20-60-20 or 5-95, or for the mathematically inclined, pi, 100 minus 2 pi, pi. What I'm trying to get at is there's the top group, a bottom group, and a big chunk in the middle. The big chunk in the middle is looking for direction, and they're going to be shifted up or shifted down depending on the dynamics of within that organization. The second thing I want to point out is this: is every group has a top 10 and a bottom 10. It is not an absolute scale, it's a relative scale. Think about it this way. Even the all-star team has its weakest players. Now, they're really good weak players, but relative to the rest of the team, they're weaker players than the rest of the group. Right? Another way to explain it, maybe a bit of a silly example, but go with me. If we go to the leprechaun convention and we ask the leprechaun to line up according to height, is there a top 10 in that group? And the answer is yes. Now, if we compare them to the basketball convention Are they in different stratospheres? Again, the answer is yes, but relative to each other, they both have a top 10 and a bottom 10. Okay, last thing I want to point out about this framework is this, is top 10 does not mean good, and bottom 10 does not mean bad. Top 10 simply means you exhibit the behaviors I'm looking for. Bottom 10 means you don't, and it is not an assessment on the character of the people. Because if what you're looking for switches, the top 10 and bottom 10 can swap very quickly. That's a bit of a theoretical mouthful. Let me explain with an example. Okay, let's go back to the Leprechaun Convention. They've lined up according to height. Who's my top 10? Is it the tallest or the shortest? And when I'm in person and I ask that question, some people say tallest, some people say shortest, and some people get to the answer I'm looking for and they'll yell out, it depends. And it absolutely depends. It depends on what you're looking for. Because if you're looking for people who can reach things off the countertop, well, chances are your top 10 will be your tallest. However, within the Leprechaun community, if shorter means better stature, or you're looking for people who can walk under the chairs without bumping their heads, all of a sudden your top 10 are your shortest, and they haven't changed anything, only your criteria has changed, right? So top 10 doesn't mean good, and bottom 10 doesn't mean bad. Top 10 simply means you exhibit the behaviors I'm looking for. Bottom 10 means you don't, and it is not an assessment of the character of the individual. Okay, so with that said, here becomes the bazillion-dollar question. If you're in a position of influence and you're trying to corral people to move toward a common cause, it might be a sales relationship, or it might be your coworkers, or it might be employees. Who does it make most sense to target? The top 10, the bottom 10, or the majority 80? And you see, there's a rationale for all three. There's a thought that said, if I could get the bottom 10 to do something, I can get anyone in that organization to do something, right? Go back to high school with me for a second. There was that one guy or girl that never, ever, ever went to the high school dance. And the thought is, if I can get him or her to go to the dance, I can get anyone in the school to go to the dance. So if I get below the lowest common denominator and lift it up, that seems to be success. All right, well, what about a majority 80 approach? Majority 80, well, let's assume there are 100 people on this virtual call. If I can get 80 of the 100 of us moving toward a common cause, that's pretty successful. I've got critical mass, I've got tipping point, I've crossed the chasm. You know, insert business cliche here, but I got a whole whack of people. So I get 80 out of 100, that seems to be success. Okay, well, what about the top 10? Top 10, well, when I ask people, if you spent your days dealing with your top 10 coworkers, your top 10 peers, your top 10 employees, your top 10 bosses, your top 10 employers, your top 10 vendors, your top 10 suppliers, your top 10 customers, your top 10 clients, your top 10 patients, would you agree your job satisfaction goes up? And almost universally, people say, absolutely. I say, would your stress level go down? And again, they say, yes. I say, so if you could work with these people and empower them enough to create an army to attract these people, would that be success? And people say, well, yeah. So let's run through an example. We're going to create a virtual company. 100 of us are part of an organization, and the bigwig of the organization, the executive director, the president, the CEO, the grand fromage, the grand poobah, whatever you want to call her, she comes to me and says, Sanjay, congratulations. And I say, uh-oh, because you and I both know congratulations is Latin for you just got more responsibility and not more pay. So she says to me, Sanjay, congratulations. And I go, uh-oh. I say, what is it? She goes, you are now the project champion of the blood drive clinic we're running. And I say, what are you talking about? And she says, your job is to get these 100 people to give blood. Go. So within this realm of our organization of 100 people, there is a 10-80-10 split to people giving blood. There are top 10, bottom 10, and majority 80. Let's define each group. Who are the top 10? The top 10 are people who normally give blood. They're not good people, they're not bad. Sorry, let me try that again. They are both good people and bad people. I don't care why they're giving blood. I look at the action of them giving blood, and that makes them top 10. They could be giving blood for really good reasons or really bad reasons. I don't care. But as an example, someone could be giving blood for a really good reason. They had a loved one that was ill. They see value. They do it all the time. They give blood every day. They're a little woozy, but they give blood every day. Okay, so that's your top 10. Or here's a not good reason for giving blood, but they still do it. They give blood because they want a free juice. Okay, so top 10, they give blood. Got it. Bottom 10, who are they? They don't give blood. Well, why? It doesn't matter. I'm looking at the action and not the rationale for the action. But again, I'll tell you, there are both really good reasons and really bad reasons not to give blood. Here's a really good reason not to give blood. I just came in contact with someone last week with COVID. I don't want to taint the blood supply. That's a really good reason not to give blood. And here's a really bad one. It's mine. Get your own. Everything in between. I'm scared of needles. I don't have time. I have religious objections. Top 10 give blood. Bottom 10 don't. Majority 80. I'm going to guess that's most people listening on this call. How does that work? It works like this. If your friends harass you enough, you will give blood. Hey, come on, we're going to give blood. Oh man, no, I'm really busy. No, you're not busy. We made a pact last time. Do you remember? Was that for this time or for next time? Shut up, we're going. Fine, let's go. Suck. But if your friends don't bug you enough, here's the typical reaction. It's a great idea. I'd love to. I'm just in the middle of this project. If it was tomorrow, I'd totally do it. I'll tell you what, I will 100% for sure sign up for next time. Show me where to sign. Top 10 do it. Bottom 10 don't. Majority 80, they're swayable. Right? So we're going to run through, carry this example a little further. We're going to pick on Bill. Billy here is a bottom 10, okay, in our hypothetical group. Billy's a bottom 10. And, oh, by the way, let me back up a second. Do we know who the bottom 10 people around us are? And when I ask this question with in-person audiences, again, people say yes, people say no. So let me try to ask it a slightly different way. Think of a group of people that you know and you interact with on a regular basis. Personally, professionally, socially, I don't care, just a group of people you know fairly well. And if I said, in that group of people, can you answer this question? Who are the top 10 when it comes to being social? And when I'm in person, I always see, people, yeah, okay, I know those. Okay, good. Then I ask this question. Who are the bottom 10 when it comes to being punctual? And I get a few little smirks and, oh yeah, I know, yeah, she's always late. Okay, and then the third question I like to ask is, who are the bottom 10 when it comes to showering? Don't point, but can you answer the question? And again, people have a little chuckle, but what I'm trying to illustrate is this, is people don't wear signs, but it's pretty darn close, right? People are constantly flagging themselves with what they do and how they act. So what we kind of do is we are constantly going through lives labeling bottom 10 people. We may not use that language. We may kind of go, oh, watch out for him. He's toxic. Oh, she's trouble. Oh, stay away from him. Oh, avoid her. And so this is kind of what we do. And what we do is I go, oh, there's Billy. Billy's a bottom 10. And I have this little voice on my shoulder that talks to me and says, don't worry, you can win him over. Then we go find the Billies, and then we corner him. And we give him 45 minutes of our best material. Yo, Billy, how you doing? You want a muffin? How about a juice? How about save a life? Give some blood. Go team, go. Go, Billy, give blood. Yay. 45 minutes later, does Billy change his behavior? And the answer is no. In fact, Billy even listening, he's doing a mental grocery list. He's like going, I need butter, milk, eggs, vodka, right? He's waiting for you to pause so he can jump in and say, can I go now? And in fact, targeting the Billies leads to what I call the triple whammy. 3 whammies. Whammy number 1, does Billy change his behavior? And we already said that, no. Whammy number 2, how do I feel? I've just spent 45 minutes trying to convince him of something I'm passionate and excited about, and he spits on me. Other than wet, how do I feel? Right? Exhausted, beaten up, frustrated. That's whammy number 2. Whammy number 3, which is actually the most powerful one that most people forget about, is how does everyone else around Billy feel? And the answer is ignore. You see, all the people around him where I could have been making a difference, I was wasting time with this energy vampire, this energy black hole, instead of actually influencing the people around him. So 3 whammies. Whammy number 1, Billy doesn't change his behavior. Whammy number 2, I get demotivated. Whammy number 3, people around him feel ignored. And we can target the billies, but it isn't through direct relationships, it's through peer relationships. So the bottom 10 approach gets us to a triple whammy, maybe not the most effective approach. Well, what about the majority 80 approach? Well, majority 80. Well, remember, where there's 100 of us in the organization, one of me, 80 in the majority 80. Limited time, limited resources. If I'm going to target and focus on 80 people, I have limited interactions. So I'm going to run through the halls of the organization, and I'm going to have to do something like this. Give blood, 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 give blood. Go team, go yay. Give blood. Save a life. And my question is this. Will that interaction influence people enough to give blood? And the answer is probably not. I guess it could hypothetically happen. It might. I don't think it will. Maybe it will, but I doubt it. And the reason I say that so indecisively is the majority 80 is a very large spectrum of people, right from I'm on the fence to convince me. The I'm on a fence people, you might pick up a few of these stragglers, not because of the relationship, but simply because of the information. They're just as likely to give blood if they saw an email in their inbox, a poster on the wall, or had someone running through the halls going, give blood, give blood, give blood, give blood, give blood. The rest of these people in the majority 80 need what we call a transformational relationship. And you running through the halls going, give blood, give blood, give blood, will not constitute a transformational relationship. So you're going to chug along, but pretty darn slowly. Okay, so hold on a second. Bottom 10 approach leads to a triple whammy. Majority 80 approach, we're chugging along, but pretty darn slowly. Well, what about the top 10? Well, the top 10, we're going to pick on hypothetical Sally. If hypothetical Sally is a majority, is a top 10, and I say to her, hey, Sally, have you thought about giving blood? If she's truly a top 10, before that sentence is out of my mouth, she's going to be halfway out the door going, where do I go? What do I do? I can save a life and get a free juice. I'm so in. She's going to go give blood. She's going to come back, and here's the best part. She will become a champion of the very behavior I was trying to instill in other people. She will sit down with a muffin in one hand, a juice in the other. She'll elbow both her neighbors and go, I just saved a life. And this is how you do it. And she's going to share with people the process. So let me explain to you what's happened from a theoretical standpoint. By me empowering the top 10, by me focusing on the Sally, I've empowered her. And by doing that, I actually created a magnet where the majority 80 started to follow her. Once you hit that critical mass, which is your top 10 plus your majority 80, once you hit that critical mass, something quite remarkable, I think, happens. And that is the bottom 10 breaks up into two groups. One group goes, hey, wait for me. I want to give blood too. And the other part goes, what the heck kind of blood-sucking organization is this? I'm out of here. And they leave. As the top 10 gets empowered, the majority 80 follows. Once you hit that critical mass, the bottom 10 break apart, some leave, some join, creating a new equilibrium. Then you know what you do? You re-10, 80, 10 the new group. You go, who's my new top 10? You empower them. The new majority 80 follows them. The new bottom 10 break apart, some leave, some join, stair-stepping you toward your desired result. This little methodology has significant impact, and I've worked with organizations on how we can improve sales with this, how we can improve organizational culture with it, how we can implement this using change management. I would love to help in any way I can. I know we are very limited for time. If you do find this to be somewhat fascinating and it has implications for groups as well as individuals, I can go much deeper on it, and I would love that opportunity. Please reach out to Kim at Infinite and let us know how we can help. Otherwise, I really want to say thank you. I appreciate you taking the time, especially here for the sixth speaker. It looks like our numbers haven't really even gone down. So thank you for your time and all the best to everyone.
All right. That was very interesting stuff. I hope you guys got a lot of information today. Couple of final housekeeping details that we have for you. Today's meeting was recorded. So if you would like to get a copy of that recording, I will be sending that to all of the attendees so that you can review that. I want to give a huge shout out to our 6 speakers today, especially Sanjay for stepping in at the last minute for Jeff Tobe. You guys brought all of the energy today and really, really showed everyone what this business is all about. And I can tell you all that everyone is so excited to get back to live events, but if you have a virtual event, our speakers can be booked for that as well. So don't forget to mark your calendars. Our next speaker showcase is going to be on October 13th. And we are looking forward to seeing you all there with 6 completely different speakers. But again, in the meantime, if you guys are looking to book someone, make sure that you reach out to us, kim@infinitespeakers.com, and we will get you hooked up with all of the awesome speakers that you saw today. So we are welcoming any feedback, positive or negative. If there's something that you think we could have done differently today, we want to hear from you on how we can improve and make this experience better for all the participants. And we're happy to hear that feedback. So I am also available to MC your events. So if you have any upcoming conferences and you need someone to step in, I am happy to do that as well. So please reach out to us. Again, it's Kim@Infinite Speakers. And thank you all. We hope you had a fantastic afternoon. Bye, everybody.